Toyota Lounge for the DNVR Avalanche Podcast, brought to you by your Front Range Toyota dealerships. We got Eric and Rudo coming to you. We're going to be talking some Hall of Fame stuff today. It should be an interesting one. I'm curious to get his thoughts on a bunch of this stuff. But before we do, the most minor of news notes, I guess, when it comes to the Avalanche. Tori Pittner drawing into the World Junior Summer Showcase for Team USA today. Neat. Always cool to see Avs prospects get some opportunity like that.
Yeah, it is. I watched a little bit, bits and pieces of highlights and stuff, and
yep.
Of guys that have been doing well, so to speak. And again, it's a summer,
Yeah.
But it's nice to see, like you said, Pittner, you feel good about yourself. You see where your game's at in the summer compared to other guys, right? Your peers. I like it. I mean, we'll see where he fits in. And I don't remember. How does the U.S. do it? Do they select their team kind of almost right away, or do they wait till more like December? I don't remember how the U.S. does it.
So at the Summer Showcase, they have two teams. They have USA Blue and USA White. So they've narrowed it down to 40 guys, but they haven't fully selected their World Junior team.
Yeah. Again, like I always say, you hear me yap all the time. God, I hate summer hockey. You know what I mean? I do. These guys never get breaks, and some guys don't show well when they haven't really been skating full throttle. You know what I mean? And then some guys do well. But where's the break? You know what I mean? And I know it's a 12 months. I get that, but somewhere somehow you still need a little bit of a break. But it's nice to see, like you said, Pittner that's in there, and it's good to see the prospects and then before they head back to their respective teams. Obviously, Pittner being DU, it's like a development camp, or it's like something where it gives you a little bit of wings. You know what I mean? You feel good about yourself and you feel good about your game. Then you go join your team. So yeah, good for him.
Connor Timmins had a notoriously terrible summer showcase a handful of years ago. He turned out pretty okay.
But that's what I'm saying, and I say to you all the time about rookie, whatever you call that, coming up in September with the Avs. You can only hurt yourself. It doesn't help you. It can only hurt you. Because if you do good, you're supposed to do good, and if you do bad, well, what's going on with them? It's just way out. It's just a way out. But whatever, it is what it is. That's how it works, and there's nothing you can change about it.
Yep. They didn't have quite as much nonsense. I don't know if I should call it nonsense, but things like summer hockey, like you're talking about back in your day, Eric. Do you like it this way better from a purely entertainment standpoint? Having more hockey to watch in the summer is great, but as you mentioned, are we seeing kids burn out at a higher rate because of stuff like this?
No, that's a great fair point by you. And there's two parts to it. I think I've never been an amateur scout, you know that, and I always say I would suck at it anyway. So it's an art. It's not me. It's not what I do. But those guys love it. And you're going to say, yeah, but you just said a few minutes ago that it's kind of stupid because it is summer. It can only, if you don't do well, you're hurting yourself. Yeah, but it's a way for amateur guys. Don't get me wrong. It's the middle of the summer. It cuts their vacation a little bit. I don't know how you do a vacation on amateur scouting anymore, but it's more like 3-4 days here, 3-4 days there. But it's a way to familiarize yourself with the guys coming up, especially obviously the younger guys. Obviously, Pittner has already been drafted, but it's a way to just kind of familiarize yourself with guys the year before when you wanted to draft him, you didn't draft him, see where he's at. Remember, I always say you compare. It's more for your mental notes, and then you have to remember that it is summer, and you're right. You do burn guys out. Here's where I say you burn out a little bit. And there's a word, burnout's a big word, but 18 to 20, I'm talking about 18-year-old, your draft year, the freaking combine, the World Juniors, it's endless. It's endless. I saw Cole Eiserman last week, and I was with him, and And it's the same thing. And it's like, oh, you're enjoying your time here, like finally, breathing a little bit on campus. And, he's at BU with Max's, and it's like, oh, no, I got to leave in a couple of days for World Juniors. And then it hit me again. I'm like, what? Those kids were just at the draft. And before the draft, they were just at the combine. And before the combine, they were, you know what I mean? Like at whatever, World U18. Oh shit, those guys, like all of a sudden by January, February, they're tired. And then all of a sudden we're the first ones to say, oh, the game dipped. Oh, the game is game dipping. Well, God, the guy's burnt out, man. He's been in freaking Finland. He's been here. He's been there. Yeah. So I think you got to be careful. You got to go through it. And then when guys jump into the National Hockey League level, whatever, like, which is, rare, but there's some of them that do. They've never played 82 games, you know what I mean? Yeah. So then you're like, by game 35, you're like, oh, he's tired. Well, holy shit, he's tired. You know what I mean? Yep. So I think it's a fair point by you, and I agree with it. I do believe you got to be careful, and those guys have to be smart. Again, I'm not smart, but there's a lot of guys out there that trainers and all that kind of stuff will kind of really teach the guys where you would benefit from a few days off here and there, you know what I mean, in your summertime, just to make sure you're able to, breathe a little bit and be ready to go for the next chapter.
Yep. Look, UC Health knows how important it is not to burn out. So make sure you're getting with UC Health and working on your mental health, as UC Health encourages Coloradans to live their healthiest lives through statewide initiatives that include taking care of your mental health. They want you to live like there is a tomorrow. They have a ton of super cool content. People like David Schlicht, a former UC Health patient, a Colorado teenager who loves being active and outdoors. He's a prime example of someone taking care of their mental health. As someone who was an Olympic hopeful, unfortunately lost his leg after a ski training accident, but with the help of UC Health doctors, David decided to amputate his leg and was almost immediately able to get back to doing what he loves most, being active and outdoors. If you want to learn more about David's story and see more inspiring patient stories from UC Health, you can head to uchealth.org/tomorrow to learn what it's like to live like there is a tomorrow. And once you've taken care of yourself, make sure you also check out Toyota. You can go to one of your local Front Range Toyota dealerships, get yourself into the official vehicle of DNVR, whatever type of car you might like, whether it's a truck like the Tundra, an SUV like the 4Runner, or a Toyota Corolla sedan style. Whatever you got it with Toyota. 17 different all-wheel or four-wheel drive models, 16 different hybrid vehicles to choose from. They've got something for everybody. So you can visit your Front Range Toyota stores at Aldo Nation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood, and get yourself into the official vehicle of the Colorado Avalanche and the official vehicle of DNVR. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. Getting into the main topic of today. Eric, I've been meaning to ask you this. You a big haul guy or a small haul guy?
Big haul.
All right.
No, obviously, with last year, right? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
yeah, I would tell you that that made me a big haul guy. You know what I mean? Where before it's like, it's, well, yeah, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but now that, like your family members in, you're like, you get a little bit more, I should say entrenched. I really never thought about, honestly, like, I really never thought about it when I say big, like, I never thought about it till about 5-6 years ago, you know what I mean? Well, before that, you're kind of like, whatever, because I really, myself, selfishly knew that I'm not a Hall of Famer, you know what I mean? So it's like, I'm not even in that conversation of in between, you know what I mean? So you got to know where you're at, right? I tell you that all the time. So it's like not even a conversation, but then your father retires, and then you start learning a little bit, hey, how does this work? You know what I mean? And then you kind of learn about the votes and, all that. Where before that, I was completely naive to it, where now it's, again, I'm talking out of my butt because now that he's in, I'm starting to forget, but I think it's like 18 votes out of 24, right, you have to get for people to support it. But I do believe there's guys that are, been waiting for years, you know what I mean? And And then I always find it surprising. And again, who am I to judge? But I think that's what we do, right? So whenever the
Yep.
class comes out, that's what we do. That's what it's for, right? You're just kind of saying, okay, maybe it's it's too early for him to have gone in, or things like that. You know what I mean? So I think you start right away talking about it, and then. But I do like it. I do think it's fun. I obviously with the election there, what is it, a month ago, whatever it was.
Yep.
It's kind of nice to see, and then right away you start nitpicking it, right? I think you just do. You just nitpick it. So, yeah. But and again, here's what I'll say on a side note. Wow, did he do a good job? The Hall of Fame. It's an unbelievable week. It's an amazing memories for a lifetime. But somewhere, somehow, it's also well done by the people behind the scenes. Kelly Massey and her crew are just absolutely amazing. From obviously Landon McDonald, Mike Gardner, that's the selection committee, but they do an unbelievable job. It's something that you'll never forget. I think that once you can do it with your family and obviously the grandkids, the kids, and everything. For us, it was a little different because my father wasn't there, but it's. I mean, I can't stress that enough. How unbelievable they put it together, and they're meticulous about every detail, and it just really makes you feel special, and because it is a special thing, and that's why I say I'm a big Hall guy now.
Well, to me, big Hall or small Hall, either way, your dad should be in it, so it doesn't really matter. But when you have the track record he has, I don't really know where I stand, to be honest. I think there's a limit, right, to how big of a Hall it can be, and this is not to talk anything down. Someone like Milan Hajduk, the Hall of very good guy for me, not going to make the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And there has to be guys like that to make it has to be a little bit selective. Otherwise, getting into the Hall of Fame doesn't really mean much, right? Like,
yeah, and that's why it's borderline all the time. You know what I mean? Like, and that those are the guys that Milan's. You know what? You and me didn't talk over the weekend on this, and that was my name that I put down right here because it's like, okay, has a major trophy, right?
Yep.
The Rocket.
Yep.
Has a Stanley Cup. Drew won that year. He won. They were both finalists for Calder Rookie of the Year. I don't remember I think Drew won it, and then anyway,
Drury won it. Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. Okay, so technically, you're talking about like, a captain of a franchise, stayed in the same franchise forever,
Yep.
as an Olympic gold medal. Right? He beats freaking Patty Waugh there in '98 in Nagano. Yep. Obviously, that was a springboard to the NHL, right? So, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's like people keep saying, like, okay, Rod Brindamore, Mark Recchi, well, Rex got it. But I think Hedgie, for example, falls in that category where it's like, for me, it's not a shoe-in, meaning, like, you might have to wait for a little bit. And on a side note, it's funny, like, one of my good buddies, his dad got in, Rogie Vachon, right? Former goaltender. Yeah. And I remember, I think he had given up. And his wife, Nicole, was awesome. And she was always doing petitions and, like the old school way, right? And sending that in. And Rogie should be in. And, you know what I mean? Because Rogie had all the stats. And, of course, she didn't have the Stanley Cup and everything. And I think 30, 40 years went by. And he really had given up. And if you know Rogie, you know that, he's not talking out of his butt. Like, it's like, and then all of a sudden you get a phone call. It's just a normal day because I don't care what people say. Turge was the best one to say it. Pierre Turgeon last year. He's like, well, I mean, it's not like you expect to get in, but you sure would like to get in. So every year you kind of have your phone charged and you're kind of waiting by the phone, and then the phone doesn't ring, and then you're like, oh. So Rogie was like that for like 30, 40 years. And then all of a sudden you get a phone call and you're like, what? Oh, holy crap.
Yeah.
And I think Turge was the best example last year too, which was like, oh my God, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, are you serious? And again, he missed the call because he was in Vegas with some friends for some sort of like reunion of some family reunion, and he was working out in the gym, and they couldn't find him. You know what I mean? So it's not like he was that, like, oh, I'm gonna
Yeah.
have my phone. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so yeah, so a guy like Hedgie is the perfect example, especially for us with the DNVR Avalanche, meaning like Avs fans and chat, whatever. Hedgie's the perfect guy. I just named everything that he's won. I mean, like, and so how come Shea Weber? And I'm not here to argue Shea, unbelievable career sometimes, but again, he gets in the first ballot right away. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think it's up to for debate, and I think those guys do a good job. And then, like I said, the committee gets together, and then they go and they submit, Rudo or whoever, right? You know what I mean? Like whoever you're shooting for. And then you got to get your votes, and you're 18 out of 24, and I think the guy I think that keeps coming up every year because the names have just been released, and he's usually like 12 seconds after, oh, Alex McGillney gets screwed again. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And it's like, but it's true, whether you like him or not. I don't know how you're familiar with him. For me, McGillney was like, because I played against him, and it's my era, but you're talking about like McDavid flies on the ice. Like this guy flew. You know what I mean? Like he was so much faster than all of us, and it was so like obvious. And again, he's got some pedigree. I don't think he's got a. Does he have a cup in Jersey? I don't even remember. Like I've never really
know.
Because but every year he's the name that people bring up, right? You know what I mean? And for us in Denver, it will start becoming hey, Milan Hayduk, just like it was. Mark Recchi and Rod Brindamore that's still waiting, right? And so it falls in the category that some are just automatic. You know what I mean? Like let's use Patrick. That's automatic. Ray Boy, that's Joe Sakic. Ford, that's automatic.
Yep.
But then there's the guys that it takes time, and everything has to line up for you too. You know what I mean? Like everything has to align for you, but I do believe that there are a lot of people that have had amazing careers, and that's where I am not a big Hall guy when it comes down to this. They've had amazing careers, and then it's like, I mean, should it be judged on the fact that you're a Hall of Famer or not? You know what I mean? I think there's guys, like I said, for me, Milan Hayduk is a Hall of Famer. Will he ever get in? I don't know. But it doesn't change the career that he's had. It's still a Hall of Fame career in my book. And then, to answer Jason there, Weber was a monster. I'm not saying that. Hey, listen, I love Shea Weber. Trust me. But, to say that it's a first ballot, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's up for debate. And maybe I would have picked him. I don't know. I actually was in love with him for years. You know what I mean? So, and next year. And then every year, exactly. He's right. Jason's right. Some years, it's the 4 years you have to wait, right? All of a sudden, it's just stacked. You know what I mean? And then you might have to wait, And then for me, like a guy like Mike Richter, I mean, you want to talk about forgotten guys. Like, all right, I'll throw in some former teammates. For me, Mike Richter should be in the USA Hockey and everything, and the World Cup and Stanley Cup. And for me, Mike Richter should be in, for example, on the goalie category. Even though last year was the goalie, it was the goalie year with Barrasso, Vernon, and Lundqvist.
I want to ask you about a couple other guys because you've played with a lot of Hall of Famers across your career. You mentioned Forsberg, Sakic, Waugh, but you also have Wayne, of course, a handful of other guys. There's one guy I want to ask you about. Danny Alfredsson in Ottawa.
Buddy, I'm so glad you're asking. Alfie's in, right? Obviously, he got in 2 years ago, correct?
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago. Yeah.
You and me talk sometimes, and we're just messing around off here or whatever. And I, remember my answer about Brian Leetch. People say, "Hey, who's the most underrated player you ever played with?" I always say Brian Leetch. And it's funny. I read something this weekend about that. Somebody answered the same way I do because they're saying, "Oh my God, he is so awesome," and people don't give him the respect, even though he won the Conn Smythe and he was like, for me, Brian Leetch is the most. But then up front, Daniel Alfredsson's my answer. Alfredsson's my answer. I love being on, even though it was only for like 20 games or so from the trade deadline on. You walk into a room, you meet him. He commands a little bit. I'm not going to say Landeskog-ish because he's different and his game was so different on the ice. But it's respect, and you know what I mean. And he's a gentleman, away from obviously the ice. but his game on the ice was so spot on. You're talking about a two-way forward. You're talking about, like, I remember his rookie year when he came in, and I was fairly young. I want to say 96 was his rookie year, 96, 97, I think. But Alfie showed up with that freaking bowl of soup or the Jofa bucket, and then, you know what I mean? Like, and you're like, who is this dude? You know what I mean? Like, and then he was just like, and then you're looking at stats, and remember, we didn't have all those highlights back then, right? You know what I mean? Because we didn't have Twitter or whatever. And then you're looking at the dude, you're looking at the stats, you're like, this guy's pretty freaking good. Like, this guy's putting up numbers. And all of a sudden, you start following him, and oh man, what a player! You're talking about, you need a goal, you got to pull the goalie. He's your guy. You need to protect the game. You're up by one. He's your guy. You know what I mean? Like, he was just like, you need him to be a shutdown guy because you're playing against, like, Peter Forsberg, whatever it is. He was the guy, and a strong personality in the sense that he wasn't a rah loud guy, but strong enough where he could command the room. He could nitpick things around that needed to be nitpicked around the locker room. And I'll tell you one thing: World Championships. You're talking about Olympics. You're talking about. He was a performer. I mean, this guy made it. He was amazing. I'm glad you asked about him because I really enjoyed him. Even though, like, listen, if I saw him down the street, you know, we'd say hi to each other. We're not friends. Obviously, we're friends, but we played 20 games together, and we lost 4 straight. Yeah. I mean, whatever. God, I'm going to blame him. He should have been better those 4 games. But I tell you one thing. Every time I see him, I run into him, and it's like, you know, it's a big conversation, and nice man, unbelievable hockey player, and well deserved. And I could read a few comments back then. Oh, Alfredson doesn't belong there. Oh boy. Like, again, I can, you know, we can argue about guys both ways, right? You know, for or against all the time.
How many Hall of Famers did you actually play with? It has to be like at least a dozen, right?
Oh, buddy, one that I like to talk about all the time is Jari Kurri. Jari Kurri was phenomenal. I tell you one thing. I know he scored 70 goals a year. 7 years in a row on 1-year deals. He didn't mind the pressure. Bring it on. He wasn't going to get locked into those long terms because in Edmonton they were kind of like a little tough on negotiations. But hey, he'd score 70 a year. People are like, oh yeah, but he played with Wayne Gretzky. Okay, ask Wayne Gretzky if Jari Kurri is a freaking good player, and he's going to be like, you know, Wayne was in awe of Jari Kurri. Jari was awesome. You're talking about a PK, two-way player, score 70. He's got 600 goals. I mean, obviously New York. Who else did we have there? Well, obviously Mark Messier. He's a machine. I mean, I have to look back in LA though.
Blakey, obviously.
Yeah, Blakey. Yeah, I didn't think about Blakey.
Did you catch Robitaille?
Yeah, I played with Luke. Yeah.
So we're already at like 8 or 9. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would have to nitpick it a little more, you know. But I'll tell you one thing: those are guys are so good in the National Hockey League. They're so good, and then all of a sudden you go a little bit above, and you're a Hall of Famer, and those guys are just ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, they're ridiculous. So, but again, yeah, Jari is just. I love playing with Jari. I played with him in LA for a couple years, and then obviously he came to Colorado for that 1 year there, and boy, I enjoyed him. You know, you can learn a lot from a guy like that. And he used to always say one thing too, and you know, again, pardon my Finnish accent here, but you know, he wasn't. His English was good, but not the greatest, and he always had that Finnish accent. And then he would always go around like, "Can't pass, can't play. Can't pass, you can't play." You know, he really wanted to make sure passes were on the tape all the time, and if you missed one, he would just like, you know, "Can't pass, can't play." But he was a good man. He was an awesome player, and yeah, Hall of Famers they're cut above the rest. And I mean, we can talk about for hours here about. You know, I was just reading on the class coming up next year stacked, and it is stacked, and it's all where you fall. You know, where everything lines up in the cards, right?
Yep. On that note, we are brought to you by ourselves. you can get in on a bunch of new DNVR events, including the 3 takeovers of Ball Arena we're doing for the Avs next year, the first of which being against the Washington Capitals in November. Come watch a certain future Hall of Famer and Alex Ovechkin with us live in Ball Arena. Go jump on that. Tons of other stuff, too. If you're a football fan, we have away takeovers, travel takeovers. You can make a little vacation of it with both the Buffs and the Broncos. So make sure you're checking those out, too. DNVR, always doing cool stuff here. I know we're going to have some Olympic watch-alongs over the next couple of weeks, too, down at the bar. If you want to come hang out for those will be tons of fun. Just join us. Consider supporting us, whether it be through the takeovers or potentially becoming a diehard, whatever it might be. We appreciate all of y'all who enjoy our content. And then make sure when you are doing some of those Olympic watch-alongs, you're getting your bets on with Bet365. Sign up today with that QR code on screen, and be sure to use code DNVR365 when you sign up. When you use that code and you bet $5, you get $150 in bonus bets. So that's just free money to play with over at Bet365. Go have some fun with that. Enjoy it. Bet on whatever you feel like. I don't know if you can bet on Hall of Fame nominations. Obviously, they already happened, so we're like 11 months away anyway. So maybe not the best bet to make, but you can go bet on Team USA to win a bunch of stuff at the Olympics. So jump on that, get in with it with Bet365. Of course, when you do use Bet365, make sure to use the DNVR365 code, and you must be 21 or older, physically located in Colorado. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER today. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. As Eric mentioned and Chad has mentioned, tons of great options for the coming years as far as eligibility. I think most of these names in chat are probably shoe-ins. Chara's a shoe-in for sure. Thornton's a shoe-in for sure. Keith is a shoe-in for sure. Getzlaf, I think, gets in. I don't know if he's as high on the list as some of those guys. And then Carey Price is an interesting one to me because you have a similar conversation with what you talk about with someone like Forsberg, right? Obviously, the peak of Carey Price is unbelievably good, but the injury issues kind of shorten that career. Eric, where do you stand on guys like that? Is the peak high enough that they should be in?
Yeah, I mean, man. I know for years all they talked about. I shouldn't say that. I should respect. I should eat my words right now. I shouldn't say that. But a lot of what they talked about was a cup, right? Did the guy have a cup? Did the guy, and it weighed in heavily. Now it's more like, obviously, with the last 15, 20 years, you're talking about Olympics, right? Oh, but he doesn't have a cup, but he's got an Olympic gold medal. Again, right? No cup. No, could have got one in Calgary. I mean, if you want to know if the goal went in or not. But anyway, we're making a new show every time we talk. But anyway, but he's got an Olympic gold, right? Or 2, or whatever it was. So, I mean, a lot of guys, I think they're going away from that a little bit. And I think Turge was a perfect one, right? Because he never had won a major award except a Lady Byng or Stanley Cup. But now you got Ronan coming in this year's never won a cup, right? I think a big thing was, he's never won a cup. And that was kind of, they didn't want to publicly say it, but they'll publicly say it when the guy won a cup, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
so it's like, Stanley Cup, or you know what I mean? So, and I'm not making fun of it because it is so hard. It's so hard to pick. I mean, I wouldn't want to be. Actually, I would. It'd be awesome to be part of those guys on the committee because it's so interesting and there's so many great personalities that have been part of the hockey community over the years, right? But sometimes it's like Carey Price, for example, he's never won a cup, but he's got a gold medal. He's won the Vezina. Career gets cut short a little bit. Probably should have, could have gone a little bit longer. I mean, it all comes down to how you present the argument, right? You know what I mean? On what, should he be in? Obviously, he's got to be in. I believe. Now, is it a matter, or does he get in ahead of? You just had names up there on the board like Chara or Getzlaf, or guys that have already, they have great careers and they have cups and they have, major awards, and so it just comes down to, it comes down to, again, Jason's making a great argument again on Price. I mean, it's all you present the argument, but you got to remember, there's only what is it, 3-4 a year or whatever on the playing side of thing, on the men's side, right? There's one or two females, right, and there's 3 or 4 male. Man, I mean, there's you can again, when you have a strong class like that, what does that do? It's going to leave somebody aside, right?
Yep.
1 or 2 or 3 guys, and then it pushes back to the guys I was talking about earlier, like McGillney or whatever. Or, I'm not laughing. I'm saying, and that's how you go 30, 40 years sometimes waiting, and then all of a sudden it's your time. I do believe that when your time is there, then you'll get in. It kind of all sorts itself out. Roenick, for example, has been waiting. For me, whether you like Jeremy Roenick or not, like I've always thought that, USA Hockey and one of the top USA born player, production wise in the history of the league, and should have been there. He got a boatload of points, and so I think you have to wait for a bit. And I think, for example, a guy like that, once you saw a Turgeon get in last year, then you knew this year Roenick was probably coming. Similar in the sense that they didn't win cups, they didn't win major awards. Like besides the Lady Byng, which is still a major award. I'm not downplaying it, but but you could have 10 points and win the Lady Byng, right? But usually not. But and then all of a sudden, 12, 1,300 points and you're not in. It's like, oh my God, it's just time to get in. So yeah, I think somebody will get knocked out, and then it all comes down to the votes, and and then they might have to wait a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 30.
Usually the guys who deserve to get in eventually, but yeah, it can take some time in some cases for sure. All right. I want to move on to active players. I know we just kind of covered a bunch of people who just retired and are eligible, but currently in the league, I think there are a good number of guys who, if they retired tomorrow, would be shoo-ins for the Hall of Fame. And you can agree or disagree with me on any of these names, and then we'll get into maybe some of the guys that there's more of a conversation on. Crosby could retire tomorrow. He's in. Yep. Alex Ovechkin, retire tomorrow. He's in. Patrick Kane, retire tomorrow. I think he's in. Steven Stamkos on that list as well. I would say Connor McDavid is certainly in, even if he retired tomorrow. Things start getting a little bit thinner after that, but Erik Karlsson, he'd be in if he retired tomorrow for me. Victor Hedman too. I put Victor Hedman on that list too. We'll get to goalies in a second. I want to do them separately, but for skaters, those guys are guys that absolutely 100% will make the Hall of Fame the day they retire. I'm not worried about them.
Yeah.
Things start getting more interesting on some of these other names. I want your opinion on some of these guys.
Yep.
Like your fellow King. I know you didn't really play with him, but same team. Anze Kopitar.
Yeah, for me, he's absolutely in. What I mean? Because of multiple cups.
18 different Selkies that he's won. Sure, yeah.
You got to remember, not many people in the history of the NHL are from Slovenia. You know what I mean? So
that is true.
Right, a little cachet there to what he is, and you're talking about stabilizing a forward group for so many years, and such a smart player, and the results are there, and obviously he's had some decent years offensively too. So I think the longevity is there, the captaincy is there, again, the Olympic, not that he's won, but representing a country like Slovenia, and being proud to be from there, and carrying the flag of Slovenian players in the history of their country in the National Hockey League has been very big for him. He's just a stand-up player. I mean, that is, for me, he's a shoe-in. I'm not friends with him. I'm not, I just like the way he plays the game. And it's another guy, when he came in, I think Mark Crawford, had him his first year. And I remember talking to him and saying, hey, watch this guy. You know what I mean? Like, oh, he's good. And then you're like, oh, okay, whatever. He was a top 10 pick, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, there you go. And then you watch him and you're like, oh, whoa, that's a player. Good size and so smart. And, you don't not the most physical player, but rangy player and never afraid to didn't back down from anything and was always right there. And yeah, that's a good one for me. He's a shoe-in. Yeah, for me.
Pretty easy. A guy with 2 cups. Let's flip it to the other side. A guy with no cups might retire this offseason. Joe Pavelski.
Yeah, I think Joe Pavelski. It's almost like Hedgie a little bit, like Hadu, right? You know what I mean? Like just a big piece of a team, and and I do believe, like I said, I'll say it again. I do believe Milan Hadu should be in the Hall of Fame for me. That's me. So when it comes down to Pavelski, it's like, well, doesn't have the cup, right?
Yep.
Does he have a major award? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't believe so. Let me look.
I don't believe so. Okay, so forget about it. Put him in the Turgeon category, Roenick category.
He's got an Olympic silver. That's the best he's got.
Yeah. So put him in the category of like Roenick, and I'm not saying they're the same type of players. I'm saying they're so valuable to their teams. They had longevity in the league. They have a few incredible seasons. They were integral parts of successful teams that just didn't go all the way. You know what I mean? Like that just didn't go all the way. So do you judge a career by 3-4 games short of the silver trophy in some cases for some guys, or I don't know. I mean, but he's the one that I think he'll get in because of the respect people have for him. I think it will take a little bit of time, before he gets in. That's just my thoughts. It might have to be like a Mark Recchi or, wait like 15, 20 years, from the start of your eligibility, right? So maybe like, whatever, 10, 12 years from now, after his 4 years then are up, right? So, so 10, 12, it'd be 16. So, yeah, give and take.
All right. I'm good. I think Pavelski should get in. Let me throw 3 names at you here that are all in a similar place as far as how their careers have gone statistically. Claude Giroux, John Tavares, and Nick Backstrom.
It's so hard, man. Like,
it's hard.
Guys, unbelievable. That's why, like I said earlier, I'm taking it back. I said earlier I would like to be on the committee. I'm taking it back. I don't want to be on the committee, because it's like, man, like you gotta, what I mean, not take a guy like, like you just said, Backstrom. You know what I mean? Like, he's got a cup. He's got unbelievable numbers. He's never won a Hart or whatever. I don't think he has a major trophy. But like, how's that not a Hall of Famer, right? You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, I don't want to be in the committee because I don't want. I mean, for me, I'd say yes to everybody. You know what I mean? Like, yes, bring him in.
It would be a very big haul with Eric on the committee.
Yes, he's in. You're in. He's in. Yeah, sure. Why not? Tiff, yes. That's all. Me too. I'm in.
It would be the biggest haul.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So it's like, it's a tough one. I'm gonna have to say, you said Giroux, Backstrom, and.
Drew Backstrom and Tavares.
Yeah, even John Tavares, captain, solid player, longevity in the league. I'm gonna say all 3. Like it would be. God, I hate doing that because it's like almost being mean. I'm gonna say if you were gonna tell me are they in the top half of getting in or bottom half of getting in, I'm gonna say bottom half. Okay. And if they get, it will take a while.
There's a bunch of other names. We don't have to go through them all specifically because I have other questions
for you.
Yeah.
Is it weird being able to say John Tavares' name?
I've always been able to say John Tavares' name. That's not my problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Feels weird just being able to hear it into the ether and not just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Well, who is that?
I can say his name.
He who has not been named.
Doesn't bother me. I'm not an Isles fan, so.
Hey, just before you keep going, like, and I grant, Jason, he's making great points too. But it's like, for me, if you're gonna get 1,000 points in this freaking league, it's a tough league. You know what I mean? Like, then I think you should be part of a conversation. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, here's the thing, right? Tavares has 1,040 points in 1,100 games. So you're talking about a guy flirting with point per game pace. This isn't a Patrick Marleau played 1,600 games or whatever to get 1,000 points. This is a guy who's actually produced at an elite level.
Yeah.
So there's a difference there. But I'm going to name a few other names. We don't have to get into them. Chad has been talking about Brad Marchand. I think he probably gets in. Some interesting ones. Corey Perry, Brent Burns, maybe some borderline type guys. You go down a little bit further, maybe guys that are going to get in but aren't quite there yet. Leon Draisaitl almost certainly will make it in once his career is all said and done. I'm not sure if he would get in today. He might. Nikita Kucherov, same thing. Someone like a Johnny Gaudreau. You have someone like Ryan Suter. There's a lot of ways to get into the Hall of Fame. But my point is, especially on some of these guys where you feel like, hey, maybe he's a borderline Hall of Fame guy. In other leagues, things like the MLB, for those guys that are close, they talk about the character clause. I know you don't work for the Hall of Fame, but you got to see behind the curtain a little bit with your dad last year. If a guy is close in the NHL, does the character clause push him over? Like if you're a Corey Perry, is he going to have a harder time? One, because he was an asshole on the ice, and two, because of the problems he had this past season in Chicago. Does he maybe get left off the Hall of Fame list, whereas some other guys might make it because of how good of people they are?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. You're right what you're saying there. Yeah, sometimes your history might hurt you, or you know what I mean, because you're not. I'm not going to say it's a popularity contest because it's not, but I think that I'm sure it's brought up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like for, you know what I mean? Like there's no nicer guy, or this guy's not a good guy, or So I'm sure it is brought up. But good or bad, right? Good or bad. I think things are brought up. As far as a guy like you named a couple names there, like for me, like Marchand's going to get in. He's in a big market like Boston, and you're talking about like polarizing figure. You know what I mean? Like you love him, you hate him. You know what I mean? He licks your face. You're like, what is that? You know what I mean? Like, but so brilliant the way he plays the game, right? And then international competition, Crosby will tell you like, oh my God, right? Remember how good he was with Bergeron and Crosby. Stanley Cup to Boston, and it's so unique, right? Because he's not a big guy, and to play all those years and to captain a franchise and to have success. He's got 3 Stanley Cup finals, right? Or give and take, or whatever. At least he's got a Stanley Cup win.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like the argument would be a yes. But I think it's but I do believe that your reputation will carry a little bit. You know what I mean? Good or bad. It might hurt you. You know what I mean? Or it might help you. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the list goes on, right? There's a lot of dudes that'll probably still get in. I didn't say Austin Matthews' name. I didn't say Drew Doughty's name. Someone in chat mentioned Roman Josi. We haven't even talked about goalies at all. They're kind of their own creatures there. Obviously, someone like Vasilevsky's going to get in. Fleury will get in. There's a lot of guys you have to go through that are going to get in. Some of them will get in quick. Some of them might get in a little bit slower. But I wanted to ask you specifically this, and we're an Avalanche podcast, so you knew this was coming. But Nathan MacKinnon wins the Hart this season. Did he cement himself as a Hall of Famer this year? Is it a lock at this point for Mac?
I do believe he's a lock in my book. Especially with you and me sat there and watched, for example, like that season last year alone, right? You know what I mean? It's like 82, 140 point, whatever it was. I do believe he's got the Hart. He's got the Stanley Cup. He's got the Calder. And he's electrifying, and he's got the Nate Dogg. I mean, stigma that people think he's which is good. I'm not saying he's not. I'm saying he's interesting. You know what I mean? For media, he's an interesting personality. I always go back about Nate, and I compare it to not the same player, but I go back to Guy Lafleur because it's almost identical. You go back to their first 3-4 years, and it was one good year, whatever. And like his rookie year is a pretty damn good year. I mean, Nate, you know what I mean? It's just after that, it's like doesn't get to the level where people thought he would get to. Like last year, it just took a little bit of time. You know what I mean? Like it was, and Guy Lafleur was the same way. And then he became a legend, obviously in Montreal, and then he put up those seasons after seasons of 50 goals, and was just a legend. I think Mac has cemented himself into legendary status in Denver, and that's why I say it's a little bit like Guy Lafleur, Montreal, all those names before Guy Lafleur. The Avalanche, we always talk about it. There is a history there now with the Avalanche 2.0, and we always say Avalanche 1.0. You have the Sakic and the Forsberg. 2.0, right away you're talking about Nate McKinnon. That's the guy, right? And that's why I say Guy Lafleur is a good example. And I think Nate gets in. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's a shoe-in.
I think he gets in for sure. But would he get in if he retired tomorrow?
Yeah, he's a shoe-in. I think he's done plenty, and he's got a lot more to give, and that's the good part of it.
All right, so let me ask about the other guy that you feel like should get in, because give Cale Makar 4 more years, and there'll be no doubt. If Cale Makar retired tomorrow, would he make the Hall of Fame?
Now you're starting to talk a little bit like Lindros, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the careers that got cut short a little bit, right? I mean, what does he have now? 5 years? 5? Is it like give and take?
Yeah, it would have been the 2018-19 playoffs would have been when he first showed up. So,
yeah, so he's got 5 years. Well, wow, that's a good question. I mean, I would say no, but he doesn't have enough longevity right now. But you know what I think? I think he's going to end up being the best defenseman of all time. He is my favorite player in the National Hockey League. I think I'm starting a franchise tomorrow, and I'll say it again. That's the guy I pick. You know what I mean? Like, without a doubt. That doesn't mean McDavid's not good or Nate's not good. That's not what I'm saying. But right now he doesn't have enough. But will he get in? Absolutely. You know what I mean? Like, because he's the only.
Sure? Are you sure he doesn't have enough? He's got a Conn Smythe. He's got a Norris. He's got a Stanley Cup. He's the only active defenseman in the NHL that has produced at over a point per game.
That's a shitty question. God. That's a great question. You're right. And then again, see, I can be persuaded. That's why I can't be in that freaking committee, because then it would be yes. As soon as you say something, I'd be like, yes, you're right. Okay, he's in. But you're right. It's unreal for 5 years what he's done. It's amazing. It's amazing. All right, then I'll be true to myself. I'll say he's in.
Here's the thing. I just said all that. I think he's probably not in. Total games played, 315.
That's my point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I remember Paul Correa. You got Lindros. Those were awesome careers, but their career, they're at what, 700-800 games, give and take. You know what I mean? And it's like,
even Forsberg got to like 600. So.
Yeah, so it's like, and I love football, you know that, but what's Bobby Orr at? I don't remember. But,
I couldn't tell you. I could look it up, but.
Yeah, I do believe he's under 1,000.
Yeah.
Or man, I've really been living under a rock. But, I think longevity will have a lot to do with it for guys to get in or not, right? So, but
Bobby got to 650 for the record.
Which one?
Bobby got to 650.
That's what I thought. So Bobby Orr 650. It's like, okay, so give Cale another couple seasons. I'll say he's in,
You got to get to 500. Get to 500 at least. Yeah.
Get to 500.
Thankfully, he will. We don't have to ask those questions. He'll probably be playing for the Avs for the next decade plus. So.
And the guy we forget all the time, and maybe you're going to ask me about, is Mikko.
Mikko, yeah.
He's, you talk about 100-point seasons, you talk about a Stanley Cup, you're talking about who knows what he's going to do internationally, but that's a guy you got to be talking about when it's all said and done. We were talking about Milan right at the start of the show. That when it's all said and done, this is a guy that will be in conversations. You're watching a Hall of Famer develop in front of our eyes here in Denver. I mean, and we tend to forget about it, and we tend to be hard on him. And he had 100 points last year, and it's like, oh, you suck, like, oh my God, this guy's a machine. And then, you know what could be good too? And I remember, and again, I'm not knocking Guy, but Guy Carbonneau got in a few years back as a defensive forward, and I always thought, and that's selfishly for Avs fans and myself, and I always thought that would help a guy like Footy. You know what I mean? Like on the side of things. I mean, a defenseman that was truly a defensive, give and take defensive defenseman. You know what I mean? And Guy Carbonneau was obviously a defensive forward. Kind of like the mold of Bob Gainey back then. But Carbonneau got in. I was like, oh my God, you know what? Like, he's got a bunch of Selkies. He's got all those cups. But again, maybe that helps a guy like Footy one day. When I don't. We'll see.
I got to be honest. For me, neither Hayduk or Foot are getting in.
All right.
It's not happening.
I told you. I say yes to everybody.
I did want to touch on Mikko very quickly. Currently, active players in the NHL that are over a point per game. There are only 14 of them with enough games played for it to matter, obviously. McDavid, surefire Hall of Famer. Crosby, surefire Hall of Famer. Kucherov, you feel like is on his way. Draisaitl, same thing. Panarin, almost certainly. Matthews and McKinnon, Malkin, Mitch Marner, Alex Ovechkin, Mikko Rantanen, Pasternak, Stamkos, Patrick Kane.
Yeah.
Do you feel like all those guys are probably getting in?
I agree.
So, Mikko on the list for sure. That is all the time we do have for today, but it's always a fun conversation to see who's on their way to becoming a Hall of Famer or is almost certainly a Hall of Famer. We do have to wrap up, though. We'll be back tomorrow with Payne. We're talking about some of the worst Avs games of all time tomorrow, so that'll be fun, or you'll hate it. I don't know. One of the two. We are going to be going live all week. As always, you can catch us here every weekday, 11 a.m. our new start, or 11 a.m. Mountain, depending on where it is. You can catch us here. So be sure to tune in. We appreciate y'all, and we'll talk to you on the next one.
We all silly like the mayor.